The mahogany conference table stretched before me like a canyon of polished wood, making the single envelope at its center seem impossibly small. $5. That's what my father left me. $5 and a note that read, "For my daughter, who always asks the right questions." I'm Samantha, an investigative journalist, and right now I'm watching my stepsister Kaya bounce in her chair like she just won the lottery, which, essentially, she has. As stated in the will, Mary, our family lawyer, continued in her measured tone, the Burke estate, including all properties, investments, and business holdings, is to be transferred in its entirety to Miss Kaya Jones. This can't be right. The words escaped my lips before I could stop them. Dad always said what, Sam? Kaya's perfectly manicured fingers drummed against the table. That you were his favorite? That you deserved everything because you're so principled? She practically spat the last word. I gripped the arms of my chair, feeling the leather crack under my fingernails. He believed in responsibility, Kaya. In using wealth to make a difference, not for shopping sprees and Instagram posts. Ladies, Mary interrupted, adjusting her glasses. There's more to discuss. But Kaya was already on her phone, probably texting her entire contact list. Oh my God, wait until everyone hears about this. I need to call my interior designer. The morning sun streaming through the office windows caught the diamond studs in her ears. Dad's last birthday gift to her. I remembered how he'd looked when she opened them, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. There are certain conditions, Mary pressed on, but Kaya was barely listening. Conditions? Whatever, I'll have my people handle it. She stood up, smoothing her designer dress. I need to go plan my celebration party. You'll get the invitation, Sam, if you promise not to be such a downer. I stayed seated as Kaya clicked her way out of the room on her ridiculous heels, leaving behind a cloud of expensive perfume and the echo of her self-satisfied laugh. Samantha. Mary's voice was softer now. Your father was a smart man, I cut in, unfolding the $5 bill. Too smart for this to be everything. Mary's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in her eyes. Sometimes things aren't what they appear. Like how he appeared to favor his stepdaughter over his own child? I stood up, gathering my bag. Or how he appeared to forget everything he ever taught me about responsibility and purpose. The note, Mary began, is cryptic and useless. I shoved it into my pocket, just like this whole process has been. As I reached the door, Mary called out, Your father kept detailed records of everything, Samantha. Everything. I turned back. What are you trying to tell me? She was already gathering her papers, not meeting my eyes. Nothing specific, just, you're a journalist, you know how to follow a paper trail. My phone buzzed. A text from my best friend Skylar. How'd it go? Want to grab coffee? I need to go, I told Mary, but paused at the threshold. Did he say anything? At the end? Mary looked up, her face carefully composed. He said you were your mother's daughter, that you'd understand when the time was right. My mother. The investigative reporter who'd exposed 3 major corruption cases before cancer took her. Dad had always said we shared the same fire, the same need to uncover the truth, the right questions, paper trails, understanding. Suddenly, the $5 felt heavier in my pocket. Thank you, Mary. I pulled out my phone to text Skylar back. Coffee, yes, and bring your laptop. We've got some digging to do. As I walked out of the law office, my stepsister's voice carried from the lobby, already planning her celebration. But for the first time since the reading began, I felt something other than anger. Dad had taught me that every story has layers, that truth hides in the details. And if there's one thing I know how to do, it's uncover the truth. I pulled out the note again, studying his familiar handwriting. The right questions. Well, here's my first one. What was my father really trying to tell me with this inheritance? Something tells me $5 is just the beginning of this story. Look at this. I turned my laptop screen towards Skylar, who was already on her 3rd espresso. Dad made monthly transfers to an account labeled Legacy Fund for the past 15 years. We'd commandeered our usual corner table at the daily grind, surrounded by empty coffee cups and scattered papers. 3 days had passed since the will reading, and I'd barely slept. How much are we talking about? Skylar leaned forward, her investigative instincts, honed from years as my research partner, kicking in. That's the thing. I pulled up another document. The amounts varied, but they always ended in 13 cents, every single transfer. 13 cents? Skylar's brow furrowed. That's deliberate, I finished. Dad never did anything by accident. My phone buzzed with another text from Kaya. Party this Saturday. Wear something fabulous. I ignored it. Have you talked to any of his old business partners? Skylar asked, pulling out her notebook. Most won't return my calls, but I did manage to get coffee with Talia yesterday. You know, the woman who used to run the company's community outreach program? The one Kaya fired last week? Bingo. I pulled out my recorder. Listen to this. Talia's voice crackled through the speaker. Your father was obsessed with this idea of empowering women in business. He kept talking about some grand plan, but the board always shut him down, said it wasn't profitable enough. Did he mention anything specific? My recorded voice asked. Just that he was working on something bigger, something that would change everything. But then, the recording trailed off. Then he got sick, Skylar finished softly. A barista approached with fresh coffees. You guys have been here for hours. Everything okay? Just fine, I smiled, sliding some papers over a particularly interesting bank statement. Working on a story. After she left, Skylar lowered her voice. What about Mary? The lawyer must know something. She's being careful, but yesterday she accidentally left this in my mailbox. I pulled out a sticky note with an address scrawled on it. Storage unit? Dad's private office, the one not even Kaya knows about. Skylar's eyes lit up. When are we going? Now. I started packing up my laptop. But first, what do you make of this? I showed her a photo from Dad's last charity gala. He stood with a group of women, all wearing silver pins shaped like keys. Could be nothing, Skylar said, but she was already grabbing her coat, or could be everything. The storage facility was in an industrial part of town, far from the glossy high-rises where Dad had worked. Unit 13 on 13, of course. Your father really had a thing for 13, huh? Skylar commented as I input the code Mary had provided. The metal door rolled up with a groan, revealing walls lined with filing cabinets and a desk covered in papers. The air smelled like leather and old books, just like Dad's study used to. Start with the most recent files, I directed, moving toward the desk. Look for anything about the legacy fund or those silver keys. We worked in focused silence, the only sound the rustling of papers and occasional muttered observations. Then Skylar gasped, Sam, you need to see this. She held up a leather-bound ledger. Inside, page after page listed women's names, dates, and amounts. In the margins were handwritten notes. Supporting daughter through medical school. Funding tech startup. Legal fees for workplace discrimination suit. He was helping them, I whispered. All of them. There's more. Skylar pointed to a sealed envelope taped to the back cover. My name was written on it in Dad's handwriting. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was a silver key pin, identical to the ones from the photo, and another note. For my daughter who always asks the right questions. Sometimes the greatest legacy isn't what we leave behind, but what we set in motion. The key opens more than just doors. Dad. Sam. Skylar was staring at her phone. You need to see this too. She showed me a news alert. Burke Industries accused of systematic discrimination against female employees, multiple lawsuits pending. The company Kaya just inherited, I said slowly, has been secretly suppressing women while Dad was secretly supporting them. What are you going to do? I picked up the key pin, feeling its weight in my palm. Dad always said a good journalist follows the story wherever it leads. I think it's time to find out exactly what my sister inherited. This could get messy, Skylar warned. It already is. I clipped the pin to my jacket. But Dad left me this story for a reason, and I'm going to tell it. Looking around the room full of secrets, I finally understood. $5 wasn't my inheritance. The truth was, Kaya's inheritance celebration was exactly as tasteless as I expected. The mansion's marble foyer sparkled with champagne fountains and ice sculptures, while waiters circulated with trays of caviar and gold-dusted chocolates. I adjusted my simple black dress, feeling the silver key pin against my collar like armor. "Miss, the service entrance is around back." A security guard stopped me at the door. "She's my sister," Kaya's voice rang out. "Let her in." She floated down the stairs in a dress that probably cost more than my yearly rent. "Sam, you actually came, and you're wearing that." "Wouldn't miss it," I smiled, noting how the company's top executives clustered around her like moths to a flame. Quite a party. Isn't it divine? Daddy would have loved it. She grabbed a champagne flute from a passing tray. Though maybe not the cost, but who's counting now? If she only knew what I'd discovered in the past week. The systematic discrimination, the buried harassment complaints, the suspicious firing of female executives, all while Dad had been secretly building his network of support for the very women his company had wronged. "Speaking of counting," I said carefully, "how are those quarterly reports looking?" Kaya waved her hand dismissively. "Ben handles all that boring stuff now. You remember Ben, right? From the board?" Ben Nelson stood across the room, deep in conversation with other suits. The same Ben who'd orchestrated most of the discriminatory policies, according to Dad's files. "Oh, I remember Ben." I touched my key pin. "How's he adjusting to his new role?" "He's been amazing," Kaya beamed. "Says we'll double profits by next quarter. Though honestly, I tune out when he talks numbers. Oh, you have to see what I'm doing with Daddy's old office." She dragged me upstairs, chattering about Italian marble and custom wallpaper, but I was watching the reactions to my presence, the nervous glances, the whispered conversations. They knew who I was, what I did for a living. "We're gutting the whole floor," Kaya announced, throwing open the office door. "That awful old desk is already gone." I stopped short. "The desk? Dad's desk?" "That heavy wooden thing? Ben had it removed yesterday, said we needed a more modern look." My heart raced. That desk had hidden compartments. I'd watched Dad access them countless times as a child. "Where is it now?" "Who knows? The salvage company took it. Sam, are you okay? You look weird." A commotion downstairs saved me from responding. We returned to find Ben making a toast. "To new beginnings," he raised his glass, eyes fixed on me, "and to leaving the past where it belongs." The crowd applauded. I grabbed a champagne flute and raised it back. "To legacy," I countered loudly, "and to asking the right questions." Ben's smile faltered slightly. Beside me, Kaya frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Just something Dad taught me." I pulled out my phone and showed her the news alert about the lawsuits. Like asking why our father's company has such an interesting pattern of treatment toward female employees. Kaya's face flushed. "That's ridiculous. Ben said those claims are baseless." "Did he? Interesting." I spotted Talia entering the party. "Maybe we should ask her opinion." "You invited her?" Kaya hissed. "She was fired for incompetence." "Was she? Or was she fired because she knew too much?" "You're being dramatic." Kaya grabbed my arm. "This is my night, Sam. Don't ruin it with your conspiracy theories." I gently removed her hand. "You're right. It is your night, and everything that comes with it. The money, the power, the responsibility. It's all yours now, including whatever's been happening in that company." "Is that a threat?" "No." I headed for the door, pausing to look back at my sister, suddenly seeming small among all her expensive decorations. "It's a warning, because I don't think Dad left me $5 and a note just to be cruel. I think he was trying to tell me something." "Sam, wait!" But I was already walking out, texting Skylar. "Need to find that desk. Tonight." My phone buzzed with her response. "Already on it. You'll never guess who bought it." Behind me, the party continued, music and laughter spilling into the night. But underneath it all, I could feel something shifting, like the first tremors before an earthquake. Ben's voice carried from inside. Don't worry about her, Kaya. Everything's under control. I touched my key pin again, thinking of all those women in Dad's ledger. No, I whispered, it's really not. You bought Dad's desk? I stared at Mary across her home office, where the massive oak piece now dominated the room. Technically, my husband bought it at auction. She ran her hand along the worn surface. Beautiful craftsmanship. Shame to let it end up in some warehouse. Skylar circled the desk like a detective at a crime scene. The compartments you mentioned. Any idea how to access them? Dad always said the key opens more than just doors. I fingered the silver pin. Mary, did he ever mention? I can't tell you anything specific, she interrupted, but her eyes flickered to a particular spot on the desk. Attorney-client privilege. But I can leave you two alone with this lovely antique for a few minutes while I make coffee. The moment she left, Skylar and I began examining every inch of the desk. The wood was cool under my fingers as I traced the intricate carvings. Here, Skylar pointed to a tiny keyhole, almost invisible within a decorative flourish. Think your pin. The silver key slid in perfectly. With a soft click, a hidden panel sprang open, revealing a USB drive and another envelope. Sam, Mary called from the kitchen. How do you take your coffee? Black is fine. I quickly copied the drive's contents to my laptop, while Skylar photographed the documents from the envelope. We barely finished before Mary returned, carrying a tray. Her knowing smile suggested she'd given us exactly enough time. Find anything interesting? You could say that. I showed her the first document we'd discovered, a detailed report of systematic harassment cover-ups at Burke Industries, complete with dates, names, and amounts paid in hush money. Ben's signature is on everything, Skylar noted, scrolling through the files. He orchestrated the whole thing. And now he's controlling Kaya, I added, using her as a figurehead while he runs the company his way. My phone buzzed, a text from Talia. Need to talk. It's worse than we thought. Meet me at Riverside Park? Go, Mary said, reading my expression. But Sam, be careful. Ben has a lot to lose. 20 minutes later, I found Talia pacing by the river, clutching a manila envelope. I kept copies, she said without preamble. Of everything. The real reason they fired me? I was building a case. Your father was helping me, but then he got sick, I finished. And Ben saw an opportunity. He's been destroying evidence, threatening witnesses. But he missed these. She handed me the envelope. Your father said if anything happened to him, I should find you. Said you'd know what to do. I opened the envelope. Inside were dozens of statements from female employees, detailed accounts of discrimination, photos, emails, a paper trail of corruption that led straight to the top. There's more, Talia said. Ben's planning to sell off the company's charitable foundation, the one your father used to help women start their own businesses. Over my dead body, I pulled out my phone, dialing my editor's number. Time to write the story. Ben will fight back, Talia warned. Let him. I thought of Kaya, surrounded by sycophants at her party. My sister needs to see the truth, even if it hurts. Back at my apartment, Skylar helped me organize the evidence while I wrote. Hours blurred together as we built the case, connecting dots Dad had left for us to find. At 3 a.m., my phone rang. Kaya. Is it true? Her voice was shaky. Ben just called an emergency board meeting. Said you're planning to publish some ridiculous expose. It's all true, Kaya, every word. Check your email. I just sent you the draft. Silence stretched between us as she read. Then quietly, there are women I know on this list. Women who trusted the company, who trusted us. What do I do? She sounded young suddenly, uncertain. Ben says he'll handle it, but remember what Dad always said about handling things? Face the truth head on, she quoted softly, even when it hurts. Exactly. I took a deep breath. The story goes live in 6 hours. You need to decide which side of it you want to be on. Sam, She paused. I need to think. After she hung up, Skylar looked at me. Think she'll do the right thing? I don't know. I turned back to my laptop, fingers hovering over the keyboard. But Dad believed in giving people the chance to choose. That's what this whole elaborate plan was about. And if she chooses wrong? I thought of the ledger full of women's names, of Dad's secret support network, of the silver key that had unlocked more than just a desk. Then we do what journalists do, I said, starting to type. We tell the truth and let the chips fall where they may. The sun was rising as I wrote the final line, its light catching the silver key pin still on my collar. In 6 hours, everything would change. I just hoped Kaya was ready for what was coming. The story broke like a tsunami. Within hours of publication, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Social media exploded, and news vans crowded outside Burke Industries headquarters. Your article has over 1 million shares, Skylar announced, refreshing her screen. And Burke Truth is trending. I was about to respond when my office door burst open. Ben stormed in, his face red with rage, waving a printout of my article. You little snake, he snarled. Do you have any idea what you've done? Exposed the truth? I stood my ground as he loomed over my desk. Or did you think those women would stay silent forever? I've already called my lawyers. This piece is nothing but lies and speculation. Really? I pulled up the audio recorder on my phone. Want to explain that to the 12 former employees who went on record? Or should we discuss the evidence from Dad's desk? His face paled slightly. Your father was a fool who let sentiment cloud his business judgment. My father, I said quietly, was a better person than you'll ever be. We'll see how righteous you feel when I'm done with you. He jabbed a finger at me. I'm going to... Going to what, Ben? Kaya's voice cut through the tension. She stood in the doorway, holding a tablet displaying my article. Threaten my sister like you threatened all those other women? Ben's demeanor instantly changed. Kaya, sweetheart, don't let her manipulate you. This is just jealousy over the inheritance. Stop. Kaya's voice cracked. I've spent the last 6 hours reading everything. The lawsuits, the settlements, the threats. I found the files you thought you'd deleted. Whatever you think you found, I found the truth. She stepped into the office. And now I'm finding my backbone. You don't understand business, Ben sneered. Your father knew that. Why do you think he put me in charge? He didn't, I interjected. Show him, Kaya. With trembling hands, Kaya produced a document. My inheritance came with conditions. Dad left me controlling interest, but with a clause. Any major decisions require board approval. Care to guess who he designated as the deciding vote? The Women's Foundation, I smiled. The one you were planning to dissolve. Ben lunged for the paper, but Kaya pulled it back. Security is on their way up, Ben, along with some people from the DA's office. You're making a mistake, he growled. Both of you. No, Kaya's voice strengthened. The mistake was letting you turn Dad's legacy into this. You're fired, Ben. Effective immediately. The security team arrived, accompanied by 2 serious-looking individuals with badges. As they led Ben away, his threats echoed down the hallway. Once he was gone, Kaya collapsed into a chair. I feel sick. You did the right thing, I said softly. Did I? The stock is plummeting. The board is in chaos. Everyone's calling for investigations. She looked up at me, eyes wet. What do we do now? We? I raised an eyebrow. I know I don't deserve your help. I've been horrible, wrapped up in myself, blind to everything that mattered to Dad. She pulled out a familiar envelope. But I found this in his study last night. Inside was another silver key pin and a note. For my daughter, who must learn to see beyond the surface. Your sister knows the way. He left us both keys, Kaya whispered. He knew we'd need each other. My phone buzzed. Talia was calling. The women from the foundation are gathering, she said when I answered. They want to help rebuild. I put the phone on speaker. All those women Dad helped over the years, they're offering support, expertise, connections. They want to honor his legacy the right way. A network of women helping women, Kaya mused. Like Dad always wanted. Exactly. I touched my key pin. But it'll take both of us, your business skills, my investigative instincts. And a whole lot of apologies from me. Kaya stood up, squaring her shoulders. Starting with Talia. Will you help me fix this, Sam? Through the office windows, I could see the media circus below, the story still unfolding. But for the first time since Dad's death, I felt like I could see the bigger picture he'd planned all along. That's what sisters are for, I said, offering her my hand. Ready to face the press? She clipped on her key pin, a match to mine. Ready to face everything. As we headed for the elevator, Kaya paused. Sam, thank you for not giving up on the truth. Or on me. Dad never gave up on either, I replied. Now let's go make him proud. The elevator doors opened to chaos, reporters shouting questions, cameras flashing. But standing shoulder to shoulder with my sister, both wearing our silver keys, I knew we were finally asking the right questions. And more importantly, we were ready to find the answers together. I'm selling the mansion, Kaya announced, dropping a stack of papers on my desk. 2 weeks had passed since Ben's arrest, and each day brought new revelations about the company's past. You're what? I looked up from the latest batch of emails from women coming forward with their stories. It's too much. She sank into the chair across from me. The marble fountains, the 12 bedrooms, the tennis court. Dad never wanted any of that. I was just trying to prove something. To whom? Everyone? Myself? She twisted her silver key pin. You know what I found in my wing of the house yesterday? 3 pairs of the same shoes, tags still on. Who needs 3 identical pairs of $1,000 shoes? The old Kaya did, I said gently. The old Kaya was an idiot. She rubbed her temples. The foundation needs funding for the new mentorship program. The mansion could cover it for years. Before I could respond, Talia burst in. You need to see this. She turned on the office TV, where Ben's face filled the screen. Burke Industries has lost its way, he was saying from the steps of the courthouse. These accusations are a coordinated attack by bitter former employees and a vindictive heiress. I've done nothing wrong. Turn it up, Kaya whispered. Furthermore, Ben continued, I have evidence that Solomon Burke himself authorized every decision I made. His daughters are destroying his legacy with their misguided crusade. That, lying, Kaya started to rise, but I grabbed her arm. Wait for it. Right on cue, Mary appeared on screen, approaching the microphones. As Mr. Burke's former attorney, I have been authorized to release certain documents that directly contradict these claims. You knew? Kaya turned to me. Mary called this morning. Dad left a sealed envelope with explicit instructions. If anyone ever tried to blame him for the discrimination, release everything. We watched as Mary methodically dismantled Ben's claims, producing document after document showing Dad's opposition to the discriminatory policies. In fact, Mary concluded, Mr. Burke spent years building a secret support network for the very women his company was failing, a network his daughters are now bringing into the light. The reporters erupted with questions, but Ben had already fled into a waiting car. He's scared, Talia observed. Good. Kaya stood up, straightening her blazer. A simple one now, not the designer labels she used to wear, because we're just getting started. My phone chimed with a message from Skylar. Meeting room, now. Big news. We found her surrounded by printouts, practically vibrating with excitement. Remember those 13-cent transfers? I finally cracked the pattern. She spread out a complex chart. Each amount corresponded to a woman in need. But the 13 cents? It was a code. Every transfer had a matching donation to a separate account. How much? I asked. Millions. Skylar grinned. All perfectly legal, all documented. Your father built a shadow fund right under everyone's noses. But where's the money now? Kaya asked. The door opened and Mary walked in, fresh from her press conference. That's where I come in. She placed a heavy folder on the table. Your father left very specific instructions. The fund was to remain secret until both his daughters wore the silver keys. Only then would its true purpose be revealed. Which is, I prompted, to transform Burke Industries into what it should have been all along, a force for change. The fund doesn't just have money. It has controlling interests in dozens of companies, all led by women your father helped over the years. Kaya sank into a chair. All this time, while I was planning parties, he was planning a revolution, I finished. But he needed both of you, Mary explained. Samantha's determination to uncover truth and Kaya's business acumen. Together, you can rebuild this company into something extraordinary. If you're willing to work together, Talia added. Kaya looked at me, tears in her eyes. I've been so awful to you. You're making up for it now. I squeezed her hand. That's what matters. Ladies, Skylar interrupted, pointing to her laptop. Twitter's exploding. Someone leaked photos of Ben meeting with known corporate raiders. They're planning a hostile takeover. Let them try, Kaya said, standing straighter. We have something they don't. What's that? Talia asked. Kaya touched her silver key, matching mine. Each other, and an army of women who aren't hiding anymore. So, I smiled. What's our next move? First, Kaya pulled out her phone. I'm calling the real estate agent. That mansion is going to serve a better purpose than hosting my parties. And then? She looked around the room at our growing team of allies. Then we show them what happens when women stop competing and start collaborating. Mary nodded approvingly. Your father would be proud. He knew, I realized. He knew we'd need to lose everything to find what really mattered. Including each other, Kaya added softly. Outside, the sun was setting on another day of changes, but for the first time, the chaos felt right. We had a plan, a purpose, and most importantly, we had each other. Ben wanted a war? Fine. He was about to learn what two sisters with their father's fighting spirit could really do. The boardroom crackled with tension as Ben strutted in with his team of corporate raiders. His smirk faltered when he saw the packed room, dozens of women wearing silver key pins, seated alongside the board members. This is a closed meeting, he snapped. Actually, Kaya rose from the head of the table. These women are all shareholders. Thanks to Dad's shadow fund, they own significant portions of Burke Industries. I couldn't help but smile at his confusion. Remember all those women you pushed out? Turns out Dad made sure they'd have a voice when it mattered most. Impossible, Ben sputtered. I've seen the shareholder records. The public ones, sure. Talia stepped forward, distributing documents. But Mr. Burke was quite clever with his shell companies and trust funds. This is ridiculous, one of Ben's raiders objected. We have agreements with major stockholders. Had agreements, Mary corrected, entering with another stack of papers. Those stockholders received some very interesting information about your past dealings this morning. They've reconsidered their positions. Ben's face reddened. You can't what? Kaya interrupted. Protect our father's company? Support the women you victimized? Watch. She nodded to Skylar, who clicked a remote. The boardroom screen lit up with a presentation. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, Kaya began, I present the future of Burke Industries. The next 30 minutes were a masterclass in preparation. Kaya outlined a complete company restructuring, emphasizing ethical leadership and women's empowerment, backed by solid financial projections and support from major investors. The mansion's sale alone funds the first year of our mentorship program, she explained, and our partnership with the Women's Foundation. This is business, not charity, Ben cut in desperately. It's both, I stood up, and we have proof it works. I gestured to the women around the table. Every person here represents a success story. Entrepreneurs, executives, leaders who thrived when given the chance. Dad saw their potential. Now everyone else will too. The vote is simple, Kaya concluded. Continue with the old model, or embrace a future where profit and purpose coexist. Choose wisely. Ben slammed his hand on the table. This company will fail under your leadership. Like it failed when you drove out talented women? Talia asked. When you covered up harassment? When you prioritized greed over growth? I built this company. No, a quiet voice interrupted. All heads turned to the door where an elderly board member stood. Solomon built this company. I've served on this board for 40 years, watched him nurture his vision. And today, for the first time since his death, I see that vision clearly again. One by one, the board members began to nod. Ben's raiders shifted uncomfortably. The vote, Kaya announced, is now open. The next few minutes were tense as votes were cast electronically. When the results appeared on screen, Ben's face went ashen. Unanimous, Mary declared. The restructuring plan is approved. Mr. Nelson's takeover bid is rejected. This isn't over, Ben threatened, gathering his papers. Actually, it is. 2 police officers entered the room. Benjamin Nelson, you're under arrest for securities fraud and witness tampering. As they led him away, his final shouts echoed down the hall. You'll regret this. No, Kaya whispered. I only regret not seeing the truth sooner. The room erupted in applause and congratulations. Women who had once been forced out of the company were now hugging, crying, celebrating their return to power. There's one more thing, I announced, pulling out an envelope. Dad left this with Mary, to be opened when the company was safe. Inside was a single photograph. Dad in his office, much younger, with Kaya and me as children. We were both wearing plastic toy keys as necklaces, playing at being business ladies. He knew, Kaya's voice cracked. Even back then he was preparing us. For this exact moment, Mary added, when his daughters would unlock the company's true potential. Talia approached with champagne. To the new Burke Industries. As glasses clinked and plans were made, I watched Kaya work the room. Gone was the superficial party girl, replaced by a confident leader who knew her worth wasn't measured in designer labels. We did it, Skylar appeared at my side. The story's coming full circle. Not quite, I smiled, touching my key pin. This is just the first chapter. Kaya caught my eye across the room and raised her glass. In that moment, I saw what Dad had always seen. 2 sisters with different strengths but the same heart, ready to carry his legacy forward. To asking the right questions, Kaya called out. And finding the right answers, I finished. The boardroom filled with the sound of clinking glasses and renewed purpose. Outside, the press would be waiting for statements about Ben's arrest and the company's transformation. But for now, we celebrated not just a victory, but a vindication of Dad's faith in us. His $5 inheritance had bought something priceless, the truth that set everything right. Ready? Kaya adjusted my key pin, which had become slightly crooked during the morning's chaos. Born ready. I smoothed down my blazer, smiling at our matching silver keys. Though public speaking was always more your thing. We stood backstage at the company's annual shareholders meeting, but this one was different. The auditorium buzzed with energy, packed with faces both familiar and new, women who'd been part of Dad's secret network, now stepping into the light. Your father would be proud, Mary whispered, joining us with last-minute documents. Both the company's profits and its impact metrics have exceeded all projections. Imagine that, I grinned. Doing good actually makes good business sense. 5 minutes, Skylar called out, tablet in hand. Social media's already trending. Everyone wants to know what the Burke sisters are announcing today. Kaya squeezed my hand. Think Ben will be watching from prison? Probably, along with everyone else who said we'd fail. Talia rushed over with breaking news on her phone. The last lawsuit was just settled. All victims will be compensated, and the company's new harassment prevention program is being hailed as an industry standard. Perfect timing, Kaya nodded. Sam, you're up first. I walked onto the stage to enthusiastic applause, the spotlight warm on my face. Good morning. A year ago, I stood in a lawyer's office, holding a $5 bill and a cryptic note from my father. Today, I'm here to tell you what that $5 really bought. The screen behind me filled with images, women receiving business grants, mentorship meetings, new corporate policies being signed into effect. It bought truth, justice, change. But most importantly, it bought something my father knew we'd need: perspective. The perspective to see that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in lives improved. Kaya joined me on stage, which is why we're excited to announce the launch of the Solomon Burke Foundation for Women in Business. Every woman who receives support will get their own silver key pin, becoming part of a growing network of mutual support and empowerment. But that's not all, I continued. We're also announcing a partnership with 12 other major corporations to implement similar programs. The ripple effect starts today. The audience erupted in cheers. In the front row, I spotted the elderly board member who'd supported us that crucial day, tears in his eyes as he applauded. Our father left us a choice, Kaya addressed the crowd. We could compete with each other or complete each other. We chose completion, and that has made all the difference. After the presentation, we gathered in Dad's old office, now a shared space for the Foundation's leadership team. The desk had been restored to its rightful place, its hidden compartments now holding new secrets, new plans for the future. I have something for you both, Mary said, producing a small package. Your father left this with very specific instructions, to be opened only when you'd proven you could work together. Inside was a framed photo of Dad with our mother, taken at the company's founding. They both wore silver keys. The original keys, Mary explained. Your mother was his first partner in the mission to empower women in business. He always said the company had two hearts, profit and purpose, like his two daughters. Look at the back, Schuyler pointed. A handwritten note was taped to the frame. To my girls, now you understand why $5 was enough. Some inheritances can't be measured in money. Love, Dad. He knew, Kaya whispered. He knew we'd figure it out. Eventually, I laughed, wiping my eyes. A knock at the door interrupted us. Talia with more good news. The mentorship applications are flooding in. Women from all over the country want to be part of this. Then let's not keep them waiting, Kaya said. We've got work to do. As everyone filed out to celebrate, I lingered by Dad's desk, touching the worn wood that had hidden so many secrets. You coming? Kaya asked, pausing at the door. Just thinking about that $5 bill. I kept it, you know. Of course you did, she smiled. The journalist never throws away evidence. Want to know what I finally did with it? What? I opened the desk drawer and pulled out a small frame. Inside was the $5 bill, mounted alongside Dad's note about asking the right questions. Perfect, Kaya nodded. A reminder of where we started, and who helped us get here. I hung it on the wall beside the photo of our parents. Ready to go change more lives? With my sister by my side? Kaya linked her arm through mine. Always. We walked out together, our silver keys catching the light. Outside, a new generation of women waited to receive their own keys, to unlock their own potential. Dad's legacy lived on, not in the money he left behind, but in the truth he helped us discover, that the greatest inheritance is the power to make a difference. And that was worth far more than $5.
Catherine Williams works as a lab technician at a major hospital. She's meticulous and responsible, with extensive medical knowledge. Her husband, Thomas Williams, is a popular architect who is usually mild-mannered but can be firm when it comes to family matters. They have a 3-year-old son named Noah. Noah is a bright and active little boy, but he's had a severe peanut allergy since infancy and has experienced mild reactions in the past. Thomas's mother, Barbara, is an old-fashioned woman who grew up in a small town in Texas. She believes that food allergies didn't exist in my day and criticizes modern parenting as too overprotective. Regarding her grandson Noah's allergies in particular, she believes it's just coddling and refuses to listen to Catherine's medical explanations, dismissing them as exaggerated. Thomas's sister Janet tends to agree with Barbara's way of thinking. Her attitude of "Mom does have a point" and frequently taking Barbara's side has created subtle tension in Catherine and Noah's relationship. The relationship between Catherine and Barbara had deteriorated especially since Noah was born. Barbara insisted that "my children could eat anything" and wouldn't accept even a doctor's written diagnosis. At family gatherings, she would ridicule the special food Catherine brought for Noah and encourage him to eat normal food. Thomas was caught between his wife and mother, trying to maintain peace on the surface. While saying things like, "Mom is just old-fashioned," he would sometimes suggest that Catherine be a little more tolerant to avoid direct conflict. A week ago, Catherine had to take a night shift to respond to an emergency at the hospital. Noah would normally be in daycare, but since Thomas was also away on a business trip, Barbara volunteered to look after her grandson. Despite feeling anxious, Catherine prepared detailed instructions and repeatedly asked her, "Please don't give him any food containing peanuts." Barbara rolled her eyes saying, "You're being dramatic," but outwardly agreed. After finishing her night shift, Catherine dragged her tired body toward home. She was originally scheduled to work until 3 p.m., but since her replacement arrived early, she was able to return home an hour earlier than planned. All she could think about was Noah's smile and looking forward to a relaxing bath. At 2 p.m., Catherine parks her car in front of her house. She feels a bit lighter knowing she can get home earlier than usual. She opens the front door and calls out, "I'm home," but there's no answer. She can hear the TV and Noah's laughter coming from the living room. "Barbara?" "Noah?" "I'm back." Catherine puts her bag down in the entryway and heads toward the living room. Usually, her mother-in-law would make some critical comment the moment she sensed Catherine's return, but today it's quiet. The moment Catherine steps into the living room, her heart nearly stops. Noah is sitting on the sofa, and on the coffee table in front of him is a half-eaten peanut butter sandwich. Barbara is sitting next to Noah, watching her grandson with a satisfied expression. Time seems to move in slow motion. Catherine smells the peanut aroma lingering in the air, and terror shoots through her body. "What are you doing?" Catherine screams. "He has a peanut allergy." Barbara looks up in surprise, then immediately frowns. "You're back already." "It's not 3 yet." Catherine tries to rush toward Noah, but Barbara stands up and blocks her path. "What did you feed him?" Catherine's voice trembles with fear. "What he wanted. What normal children eat." "You're just being overprotective," Barbara declares, folding her arms. "What are you thinking? I've told you so many times that Noah has a peanut allergy. I even showed you the doctor's diagnosis." Catherine's voice rises with panic and anger. Anger flashes across Barbara's face. "Be quiet. He'll get used to it if he keeps eating it. That's how my daughter got over hers." The moment she hears this, something snaps inside Catherine. She pushes Barbara aside and rushes to Noah. Looking at Noah's face, she realizes her worst fears are becoming reality. Noah's cheeks are beginning to redden and swell, and a rash is appearing around his eyes. He's scratching his neck and says in a small voice, "Mommy, my throat is itchy." Barbara is still making excuses. "You're overreacting. It's just a little rash. Janet had the same thing as a child, but I made sure she kept eating it, and she got over it." Catherine ignores Barbara and checks Noah's condition. His breathing is becoming labored, and his lips are starting to swell. These are the initial symptoms of anaphylactic shock. "Noah, it's okay. Mommy's here," Catherine says, trying to appear calm. She takes an EpiPen from the side table drawer in the living room and quickly injects it into Noah's thigh. "What are you doing?" Barbara cries out in shock. "Call an ambulance. Now!" Catherine commands. Barbara doesn't move. "You're overreacting. It's just a little." Her words trail off. Noah's condition has begun to deteriorate rapidly. He's clutching his throat, his face has turned pale, and his lips are swelling even more. His breathing becomes difficult, and he starts to gasp. "Noah!" Catherine screams and takes out her cell phone to call 911. A 3-year-old boy is having an anaphylactic shock. "I've given him an EpiPen, but his condition is worsening. Please send an ambulance right away." Barbara stands with her mouth open, staring at her grandson's transformed appearance. For the first time, a look of fear crosses her face. She's slowly beginning to understand the gravity of what she's done. I didn't think," Barbara says in a trembling voice. Catherine ignores her and picks up Noah, heading toward the front door. "There's no time to wait for an ambulance. I'll drive him to the hospital myself." Barbara follows, trembling. "I'll come too." Catherine turns around and looks at Barbara with icy eyes. "You've done enough. Stay home. Call Thomas and tell him honestly what happened." Barbara is at a loss for words, standing frozen in the entryway. Catherine puts her son in the car and drives at full speed to the hospital. Looking at Barbara's diminishing figure in the rearview mirror, Catherine felt herself trembling with anger and fear. The hospital responded quickly. Since it was the hospital where Catherine worked, many staff members knew her and understood the seriousness of the situation. Noah received immediate treatment, with additional adrenaline, steroids, and antihistamines administered. Catherine waited outside the treatment room and called her husband with shaking hands. Thomas was in a meeting downtown but immediately said, "I'm on my way," and hung up. After 30 minutes, Noah's condition began to stabilize. However, the doctors cautiously decided to keep him overnight. Catherine sat by Noah's bedside, clutching his small hand. "Kathy!" Hearing Thomas's voice from the hallway, Catherine looks up. She sees her husband rushing toward her, with Barbara and Janet following behind. Anger wells up inside her. "Is Noah okay?" Thomas asks, breathless. "He's stable now. But it was close." Catherine's voice shakes with emotion. Thomas approaches Noah's bed and touches his sleeping son's cheek. His face shows deep concern. "How?" Catherine looks straight into her husband's eyes. "Why don't you ask your mother?" Thomas turns around and looks at Barbara and Janet standing in the hallway. Barbara appears small and shrunken, with Janet supporting her with an arm around her. "Mom, what happened?" Thomas's voice is quiet, but there's anger beneath it. Barbara tries to enter the room, but Catherine stands up and blocks her. "You're not coming in here. You put Noah in danger." "That's enough." Barbara searches for words. "I only thought I was doing what was best." "What was best?" Catherine's voice rises. After all my explanations. After showing you the doctor's diagnosis. After teaching you how to use the EpiPen. Janet steps forward. Kathy, Mom just made a mistake. She didn't mean to harm her grandson. During this exchange, Dr. Lynn's voice is heard from the hallway. She's Noah's attending physician. What's going on? This is an intensive care unit. Please keep it down. Dr. Lynn enters the room and sees the tense family. After Catherine briefly explains the situation, the doctor's expression becomes stern. Mrs. Williams, she says to Barbara, do you understand that your grandson's life was in danger? If he had arrived a few minutes later, he could have suffocated. Barbara turns pale. But my daughter also. Janet suddenly interrupts her mother. Mom, that's enough. Dr. Lynn continues, this is clearly negligence. Depending on the circumstances, it could be considered child abuse. As a hospital, we have an obligation to report this to Child Protective Services. The color drains from Thomas's face. Doctor, it's the law, Dr. Lynn says firmly. Especially when a child's known medical condition is ignored. Catherine returns to Noah's bed and holds her sleeping son's hand. We'll do whatever it takes to protect Noah. From anyone. Thomas was silent for a while, but finally says with resolve, Mom, I need you to tell me exactly what happened. Why did you feed Noah peanuts? The group moves to the hallway. Barbara clutches a handkerchief with trembling hands and begins to explain. I thought he was being raised too protectively. In my day, children ate everything and grew up strong. Those food allergies. Mom, that's a superstition, Thomas says sternly. Noah's allergy is medically proven. He could have died. But Janet had the same thing as a child. When I forced her to keep eating it, she got over it. Barbara desperately tries to justify her actions. A strange expression crosses Janet's face. After hesitating for a moment, she slowly speaks up. Mom, let's stop the lies. I didn't have a peanut allergy. It was just a mild rash. I saw a doctor properly, and it cleared up quickly. Barbara stares at her daughter, mouth open, speechless. What? But Mom has always believed her way is right, Janet says sadly. I didn't rebel. But this time is different. Noah's life was in danger. Thomas looks back and forth between his mother and sister with a shocked expression. So, that whole story was a lie. Barbara begins to cry. I just thought I was right. Because Kathy is so neurotic. A determined expression appears on Thomas's face. Mom, what you did today is unforgivable. You endangered Noah's life. We need time. What do you mean? Barbara asks in a trembling voice. For now, I want you to keep your distance from Noah. At least until you understand the seriousness of his allergy. Barbara looks at her son with tears streaming down her face. For the first time, her expression shows genuine regret. But Catherine and Thomas's resolve is firm. Family safety comes first. Please go home, Barbara, Catherine says quietly. We need to focus on Noah. We'll decide what to do about you later. Barbara and Janet leave the hospital with heavy steps. Catherine and Thomas return to Noah's bed, and holding their little son's hands, they begin to think about what they should do next. A week has passed. Noah was discharged after one night in the hospital and is recovering at home. Catherine has taken leave and has been spending time with her son. Thomas has also adjusted his work schedule to spend more time with his family. During this time, there have been several calls and messages from Barbara, but Catherine and Thomas have decided to keep their distance. Only Janet visited once to report on her mother's condition. Mom is regretful. But I don't know if she understands. That afternoon, Lisa Johnson, a social worker from Child Protective Services, visited their home. She came to investigate the situation following Dr. Lynn's report. We need to ensure that something like this never happens again, Lisa explains gently. Your child's safety is the top priority. Catherine and Thomas explain the whole story to Lisa in detail. Barbara's stubborn attitude, her dismissal of Noah's allergies, and the dangerous situation that ultimately occurred. We're considering legal options, Thomas says quietly. My mother seems to still not fully understand, despite her negligence. Lisa nods while taking notes. In this situation, considering a restraining order is understandable. Especially if there's a risk of recurrence. Catherine squeezes her husband's hand. I think we need to make some tough decisions. But Noah's safety is our priority. That evening, Catherine and Thomas scheduled an appointment with attorney David Martin. They discussed legal options and considered what measures could be taken. Even if it wasn't intentional, there was clear negligence, David explains. The court typically prioritizes the child's safety. Especially when there's medical evidence. The next day, Catherine and Thomas submitted a restraining order application to the local court. At the same time, a report from Child Protective Services was submitted, along with medical records from the hospital as supporting evidence. The court responded quickly, and a temporary restraining order was issued. Barbara was forbidden from approaching Noah and could not come within 100 feet of Catherine and Thomas's home. The day after Barbara was served with the notification, she called in a rage. How could you do this? She cried out. Can't I even see my grandson? Thomas took the call and responded calmly. Mom, this is the result of your own actions. Noah could have died. But I just made a mistake. Barbara's voice trembles. Yes, you made a mistake. And we need to protect Noah. Until we're confident that you take his allergy seriously and that this will never happen again. After this conversation, Barbara began spreading the story among her local friends. However, contrary to her expectations, the community's response was cold. Particularly at the church she had belonged to for many years, many people began to distance themselves from her. Parents raising children with food allergies were especially angry about her actions. Janet visited Barbara and tried to convince her to understand the seriousness of the situation. However, Barbara still continued to insist that she had been right. "Mom, look at reality," Janet said harshly. "You put your grandson in danger. If Kathy hadn't come home early, Noah might have died." "I didn't think it was that serious," Barbara says in a small voice. "That's the problem. You prioritized your beliefs over medical evidence. And now you're paying the price." 2 weeks after the restraining order, a formal hearing was scheduled at the court. Catherine and Thomas attended with their lawyer, and Barbara came with her own attorney. At the hearing, Catherine testified tearfully. "We explained it many times and showed her the doctor's diagnosis. Still, my mother-in-law refused to believe, and as a result, my son's life was endangered." Barbara's lawyer argued that she acted without malice, but the judge placed emphasis on the medical evidence and the Child Protective Services report. "Mrs. Williams," the judge addressed Barbara, "your personal beliefs endangered your grandson's life. Ignoring medical evidence and failing to follow parental instructions is serious negligence." The judge confirmed a 6-month restraining order and further ordered Barbara to participate in an educational program about food allergies and complete 200 hours of community service. As they left the courthouse, Thomas approached Barbara. His expression showed deep sadness. "Mom, we need time. I want you to understand that Noah's safety is our top priority." Barbara nodded with tears in her eyes. For the first time, genuine regret was visible in her eyes. I was truly wrong. I endangered my grandson. Please forgive me." "We might be able to forgive, but regaining trust takes time," Thomas said quietly. "I want you to start by following the court's orders and learning about allergies." Barbara nodded silently and walked away with heavy steps. Catherine and Thomas held hands, resolving to begin a new chapter. Their top priority was Noah's safety and creating an environment where he could grow up healthy. A year later, Noah's 4th birthday party was being held in Catherine and Thomas's backyard. Noah was energetically playing with his friends, showing signs of complete recovery. Over the past year, Catherine had begun working with a local allergy awareness group, striving to promote understanding in schools and childcare facilities. Her experience resonated with many parents and provided support for families facing similar situations. Thomas also participated in awareness activities between his work commitments, particularly sharing his experience of overcoming family conflicts from a male perspective. Sometimes even those we love can become a threat to our children's safety. How we handle such situations is important, he said. Barbara had experienced significant changes over the past year. She completed the court-ordered food allergy education program and voluntarily took additional courses. For her community service, she helped with a support group for children with food allergies at the local hospital, sharing what she had learned from her experience. Her reputation in the community was gradually recovering, but many people were still wary of her. Parents with young children, in particular, hesitated to let their children be around her. During this time, Janet had been working on repairing her relationship with her mother while supporting her brother and sister-in-law. "Mom is really trying to change," she told Catherine. That incident was a major turning point for her. As Noah's birthday party was winding down, the doorbell rang. When Catherine opened it, Barbara was standing there. She was holding a small present in her hand. After the restraining order was lifted, she had promised not to come to the house without Catherine and Thomas's permission. "May I come in?" Barbara's voice had become softer than before. After a moment's hesitation, Catherine called her husband. When Thomas came, he stared at his mother for a while, then quietly nodded. "For a little while," he said. Barbara went out to the garden and saw Noah playing. She didn't approach him immediately, looking to Catherine and Thomas for permission. When they nodded, she slowly approached Noah. "Noah, it's Grandma. Do you remember me?" Noah stopped playing and looked at Barbara. He showed a slightly cautious expression, but when Catherine said, "It's okay," he seemed to relax a bit. "Happy birthday," Barbara offered a small package. "I chose this present especially for you." Catherine opened the package first and checked the contents. It was a children's picture book titled Learning About Food Allergies. The cover featured a character called Peter with Peanut Allergy. Catherine flipped through the book, checked the content, and quietly handed it to her son. "Noah, look. It's a lovely book." Noah accepted the book with interest, his eyes lighting up at the colorful pictures. "I'll read it to you," Barbara offered. "If that's okay." Catherine and Thomas exchanged glances, and after a brief silence, Catherine slowly nodded. "That's fine." Barbara sat next to Noah and began reading in a gentle voice. "Peter has a special body. His body really doesn't like peanuts." Noah listened with a serious expression, occasionally asking questions, enjoying the time with his grandmother. After a while, Barbara closed the book and gently stroked Noah's head. "Noah, Grandma made a big mistake," she said, looking straight into her grandson's eyes. "But I won't do it again. I promise." Noah looked a bit confused but, with the pure heart of a child, said, "Okay, Grandma." Catherine watched this scene, struggling with complex emotions. While she hadn't completely regained trust, there were definitely signs of change. When the party ended and Barbara was leaving, Catherine walked her to the door. "Thank you, Catherine," Barbara said quietly, "for giving me a chance." Catherine took a deep breath. "We're just getting started, Barbara. Trust, once lost, takes time to rebuild." "I understand," Barbara nodded. "I'm prepared to wait. And I'll do anything to prove that I've truly changed." Catherine smiled slightly. "I'm glad to hear that." That night, after Noah was in bed, Catherine and Thomas sat facing each other in the kitchen. "What do you think?" Thomas asked. "I think she has changed," Catherine answered honestly. "I can't say I completely trust her yet, but it's certain that she's taken a small step forward." Thomas took his wife's hand and said, "We'll take it slow, little by little." The couple gazed at the starry sky through the window, quietly accepting that family bonds can overcome trials and be reborn in new forms. With Noah's safety as their top priority, they were beginning to move forward toward the future, cautiously but with hope. In the living room, where soft spring sunlight streamed in, I was holding a cherished family photograph. The row of picture frames on the mantelpiece quietly told the story of our family history. Eric's birth, his first field day, last year's Christmas. Each moment was engraved as an irreplaceable memory. In the photo, my husband Michael, our son Eric, and I were beaming with smiles. It was taken last summer at our cottage in Greenwich. As I gazed at the photo, I instinctively placed my hand on my abdomen. After 5 months of pregnancy, my belly was gradually growing larger. Our family was eagerly awaiting the birth of our second child. "Mom, I'm home." As usual, Eric had returned from school. He ran straight to me and gave me a big hug. Despite being mindful of my belly, he told me about his day with a bright smile. "Today, I got a perfect score on my math test." "That's wonderful, Eric." I gently stroked my son's head as I headed toward the kitchen. Our after-school snack time was an important daily ritual. Homemade chocolate chip cookies and organic milk. Eric's eyes sparkled as he munched on the cookies. How blessed this everyday life was. I silently savored feelings of gratitude. On weekends, we enjoyed gardening in our spacious yard. While I tended to the flower beds, Eric observed insects or sometimes imitated me, playing with the soil using his small metal shovel. "Mom, what's the name of this flower?" "This is lavender. Can you smell its gentle fragrance?" Our conversations echoed in the garden amidst the spring air. Michael occasionally helped with the gardening when he had breaks from work. However, recently, subtle changes began to appear in our daily routine. Michael's returning time had been getting progressively later. "A big project has started. I'll be busy for a while," he explained. I could only nod at my husband's words. I understood the importance of his role as a vice president at a pharmaceutical company. Still, I couldn't help feeling a small sense of anxiety as he increasingly came home at 9 or 10 o'clock. Eric had to go to sleep more and more often without being able to say, "Good night, Daddy." As I watched my husband eating his reheated dinner alone, I wondered if I should say something. But I didn't want to worry him when he already looked so tired after finishing his meal. His phone calls had increased too. Every time the phone rang, he would leave the room. I felt something was off when he lowered his voice to speak. However, when he explained it was confidential matters, there was no room for questions. Working on weekends also became more frequent. The competition with rival companies is fierce. If we miss this opportunity, it will be taken by another company. I told myself I should be grateful for my husband's dedicated work rather than harboring doubts. However, what concerned me most was the change in Eric's behavior. He woke up crying in the middle of the night more often. When I rushed to him, Eric would say in a trembling voice that he had a scary dream. When I hugged him, he clung to me more than usual. Concerning reports from school began to arrive as well. Recently, Eric seems lost in thought during classes. He has been spending more time drawing alone rather than playing with friends, his teacher, Mrs. Watson, told me, making my heart tighten. Eric, who had always been active and popular in class, who used to play tag with everyone during recess. As I listened to the teacher's words, I desperately tried to recall my son's recent behavior. Even during morning preparations, something was different. His movements were slower when putting on his uniform, and he seemed distracted. When I asked, "Eric, are you all right?" he would only answer in a small voice, "Yes, I'm fine." What concerned me most was that Eric had stopped drawing pictures of our family. Since he was little, he loved drawing family pictures. But now, he only drew landscapes and animals. There were also subtle changes in the relationship between Michael and Eric. Eric would casually leave when his father approached. Even when invited to the park on weekends, he began refusing, saying, "I have homework." My anxiety grew day by day. I consulted with my friend Mary. "It might be the emotional ups and downs that come with his age," Mary suggested, and I desperately tried to believe her. And yet, I wondered why. On the day we learned our second child would be a girl during my prenatal checkup, tears involuntarily welled up as I saw the little life on the monitor in the examination room. But Michael's expression, as he watched the screen beside me, seemed to freeze for a moment. A girl. Something other than joy was mixed in his voice as he mumbled those words. In my estimation, perhaps my husband had hoped for a boy. As an heir to the Brown family. But was that thought correct? Something felt off. Or was it just my imagination? And then, my mother-in-law Elizabeth's visits increased. "Linda, how's your morning sickness? Are you resting well?" While outwardly concerned, her eyes seemed to be monitoring my every move, making me uncomfortable. As spring drew to a close, the anxiety in my heart grew gradually but steadily. It had become a habit for me to stand by the window at night after putting Eric to bed, gazing at the scenery outside. On full moon nights, the lavender in the garden gleamed silver. These flowers that Michael and I had lovingly planted when we first moved into this house. The happy memories of those days intertwined with my current anxieties, creating a complex knot in my heart. Was this anxiety really just my imagination? Or was I missing something important? The baby moved in my womb. That tremor felt like it was trying to tell me something. One night, I was lying alone in the bedroom. Michael had sent a curt message hours earlier saying he would be late again. "An important meeting is running long," the excuse I'd been hearing frequently lately. Under the soft light of the bedside lamp, I was reading the same page of a childcare book over and over. My eyes followed the words, but my mind was foggy, unable to absorb the content. The clock showed 11:30. Outside, thunder roared, and large raindrops hammered against the roof. Sudden storms in early summer were common in this area. The old mansion's window frames creaked, and the shadows of wind-swayed garden trees cast eerie patterns on the bedroom walls. Still, tonight's storm felt more violent than usual. Almost as if it were foreboding what was about to happen. I instinctively placed my hand on my abdomen, gently stroking to confirm the presence of the little life inside. Suddenly, Eric's scream-like voice echoed, and the bedroom door burst open. When I looked up hurriedly, Eric rushed into the room, sobbing. His small pajama-clad body was shaking violently. "Eric? What's wrong?" I immediately put the book down and reached out to him. Eric leaped into my arms without hesitation. "Were you scared?" "The thunder." Eric shook his head. At 6 years old, he had recently become able to sleep by himself. He shouldn't have been afraid of thunder anymore, but tonight he was clearly different. His small body trembled in my arms. Feeling my shirt getting wet with his tears, I gently rubbed his back. "It's all right, Mom is here." After a while, Eric's trembling gradually subsided. But his hands, tightly gripping my clothes, still didn't relax. "Did you have a bad dream?" When I asked gently, Eric slowly raised his face. He stared at me with tear-stained eyes, moved his trembling lips several times, and then suddenly blurted out, "Mom, don't have the baby." That cry shook my heart more violently than the thunder. Why? Eric, the baby will be our precious family member. I tried to answer in as calm a voice as possible while hiding my agitation. However, Eric's next words froze my heart. Dad said, "You'll disappear." His confession, squeezed out in a trembling voice. My mind went blank. Did Dad say that? Eric, did Dad tell you that? No. Eric shook his head. I heard Dad and Grandma talking. At that moment, lightning flashed, illuminating the room in a bluish-white light for an instant. With the following rumble, Eric clung to me even more tightly. Eric, can you tell me what you heard? Can you tell Mom? I tried desperately to stay calm. But I could tell my voice was trembling slightly. Eric hesitated but gradually began to speak. Last week, when he was walking down the hall to go to the bathroom, he heard his father and grandmother's voices coming from the study. Dad was saying, he's going to live with a new family. My heart began to race. And he kept saying the name Kate several times. Kate? A name I didn't know. Various thoughts began to swirl in my head. When Mom has the baby, you'll have to go somewhere. Grandma said, it would be better. Eric's voice was broken. But each word sank into my heart like heavy lead. Eric, thank you for telling me. I managed a smile and gently hugged my son, being careful not to let Eric see the tears rolling down my cheeks. It's going to be all right. Mom isn't going anywhere. I'll always protect you and the baby. I wasn't sure if those words were my determination or just a wish. At that time, I couldn't quite tell. Really? Do you promise? Will you stay with us forever and ever? My son's anxious upward gaze. In his eyes, illuminated by moonlight, tears still glistened. I couldn't lie to that pure look. Eric's small hand gently touched my belly, as if trying to protect his yet unseen sister. I promise. You and this baby are Mom's precious treasures. Still embracing Eric, I lay down on the bed. My son's small body gradually relaxed. I began to hum a lullaby. The dear song I had been singing since Eric was a baby. Soon, I heard his regular breathing. His peaceful sleeping face made the earlier fear and anxiety seem like a lie. But I understood the weight of the courage he had shown me, and the deep love behind it. I desperately tried to recall my husband's recent behavior. Late returns, secretive phone calls, and that complex expression when we found out it was a girl. Everything was connecting. But I wasn't yet ready to accept that truth. Looking at Eric's sleeping face, I strengthened my resolve to protect this child, and the child in my womb, no matter what. That night, I didn't close my eyes until dawn, still holding Eric. From that day on, Eric's confession never faded from my mind, rather, it gained weight with each passing day. It was as if it had given a definite form to the discomfort I had been trying to ignore. Every morning when I woke up, my son's words from that night echoed in my head. I still couldn't fully understand what "Mom will disappear" meant. But the premonition that whatever those words pointed to was surely creeping into our daily lives grew stronger day by day. Michael's weekend work had become routine. I realized I'd stopped questioning his explanation that the important new drug development project is in its final stages. Saturday, Sunday, from early morning until late at night. Family time was gradually slipping away like sand from an hourglass. And then there were his work calls. Each time his smartphone rang, Michael invariably disappeared to his study or the garden. I could only nod silently at his, "It's confidential," explanation. But the occasional soft laughter I heard didn't sound like business conversation. My mother-in-law Elizabeth's visits also increased. While outwardly showing concern for me as a pregnant woman, her sharp gaze seemed to follow my every move. "Linda, has your morning sickness subsided? Are you resting?" Despite her worried tone, her eyes seemed to hide a different intention. There was an uncomfortable feeling of being monitored, whether during lunch together or when I went out. And the most concerning change was our finances. Michael suddenly began strictly limiting the use of credit cards that I had previously been free to use. "It's part of the company's cost-cutting trend. We need to review our household expenses too." While feeling that explanation was odd, I couldn't pursue it deeply. However, his credit card statement still showed purchases from high-end brand stores. I began secretly recording my husband's actions. Departure and return times, destinations, frequency of calls noted in a planner. Gradually, unnatural patterns emerged. Particularly late returns every Wednesday night. Important meetings every Friday afternoon. It was around then that I consulted with my friend Mary. We sat at our usual table in a nearby cafe. It was during Eric's school hours. Gentle classical music played in the cafe. "Linda, you don't look well lately." At Mary's kind voice, I suddenly felt my eyes welling up. The anxiety I'd been carrying for weeks, unable to tell anyone, was about to overflow. "Mary, I might be crazy. But..." With trembling hands holding my coffee cup, I gradually began to talk. About Michael's changes, Eric's warning, and the growing sense of something wrong. "Linda, your intuition might be right. But you need proper evidence. You should avoid emotional actions that you might regret later." Mary's calm advice gave direction to my confused heart. Her words felt like a faint light in the darkness. The decisive turning point was a single photograph found in Michael's wallet. When tidying up laundry, a brown leather wallet fell out of his pants pocket. Inside, I casually opened it to find a picture of an unfamiliar little girl. About 3 years old, with a lovely smile. The background was a familiar park. It was Eric's favorite playground near our house. A few days after that discovery, Eric's trembling account connected all my suspicions. "Mom, I saw Dad at the park. It happened when he was playing with friends on a holiday. Michael was with an unknown woman and the little girl from the wallet photo. They looked like a harmonious family, sharing ice cream. That person called Dad Michael. And the little girl called him Daddy." Eric's testimony left a deep wound in my heart. And to make matters worse, rumors leaked from my husband's company colleagues. The reality that everyone knew about Michael's relationship with his subordinate, Kate Summers. The decisive moment was my mother-in-law's phone conversation. Elizabeth was on the phone in the garden. I was reading a book by the window, but words carried by the wind caught my ear and wouldn't let go. "Yes, I'm aware of Kate's child. If it's for Michael's happiness. Yes, I'll persuade Linda." That night, I examined Michael's credit card statements in detail. Frequent payments at children's clothing stores and toy shops. Meals at fancy restaurants. And what looked like regular rent payments for a suburban apartment. All evidence pointed to a single truth. I quietly made up my mind. On Mary's recommendation, I decided to hire a reliable private detective. The detective acted quickly. security camera footage, department store shopping records, apartment entry records, and a series of decisive photographs. 3 people dining at a fancy restaurant, entering an apartment, enjoying a holiday at the zoo. The woman in the photos was undoubtedly Michael's subordinate, Kate Summers. And next to her was always the little girl from the wallet photo, Emma Summers. The detective's report contained cold facts. Kate Summers, 29. Michael's direct subordinate. Their relationship began 3 years ago, resulting in a daughter, Emma Summers. Currently 3 years old. Address: a luxury apartment in Greenwich. Monthly rent comparable to our mortgage payment. It should have been a considerable burden even for Michael's income. Photos were attached to the report. A scene from a holiday. Kate was a woman with refined beauty, looking younger than me. Dressed in a stylish dress, naturally leaning on Michael's arm. The little girl playing innocently nearby. Golden curly hair and eyes shaped like Michael's. The more I looked, the more the reality I wanted to deny gleamed brightly before my eyes. It was a moment when all questions became cruelly clear. Eric's warning, my mother-in-law's unnatural attitude, Michael's changes. And the reason for that complex expression on the day we learned our second child would be a girl. Everything spread before my eyes with the clarity of being connected by a single thread. I stood by the darkened bedroom window, holding the report. My reflection in the window revealed my increasingly pregnant figure. To protect my unborn child, and for Eric's future, what should I do next? Gently embracing my abdomen with both hands, I sighed deeply. For Eric's and this child's future. It didn't take long to find that answer. For 3 days after receiving the detective's report, I couldn't sleep. On the desk in the study, mountains of evidence I had collected were piled up. Photos from the detective, credit card statements, call records. And a copy of the apartment rental agreement. All evidence told the truth that would greatly change my life. On Mary's recommendation, I met with a female lawyer specializing in divorce issues. Jennifer Robinson, one of the most trusted lawyers in Greenwich. Her advice was precise and calm. In case of trial, evidence of infidelity plus the existence of a secret child carries significant weight. Especially birth during marriage is important. I nodded silently while taking notes. However, to be more certain, voice evidence would be perfect. If you could record statements from your husband or mother-in-law. At those words, I gasped involuntarily. Eric's testimony. His confession on that rainy night. Yes, I should have recorded that conversation. But fate was still on my side. That night, Eric visited my bedroom again. Mom, I had another scary dream. While embracing my son, I quietly activated the voice recorder on my smartphone. Eric told me in more detail about the conversation he had overheard between his father and grandmother on sleepless nights. About the new family, about a woman named Kate, and about plans to drive me out. The cruel truths narrated in a childish voice. My hands were trembling, but the recording was surely made. Next, I needed financial documents. Watching for Michael's absence, I opened the safe. The password was our wedding anniversary. Ironically, it hadn't been changed. Inside, there were more documents than I had expected. The original apartment contract, records of regular transfers to an account in Kate Summers' name, and most shockingly, a stack of drafted documents concerning Eric's custody. The date was set for a month after my expected delivery date. One Friday night when all preparations were complete. Michael had come home unusually early. I quietly approached him watching TV in the living room. "We need to talk." At my voice, Michael looked puzzled. "Where's Eric?" "He's at Mary's house for a sleepover." On the table, I laid out the evidence one by one. Photos, statements, recorded data. And finally, the stack of documents taken from the safe. I could see the blood drain from Michael's face. "Explain." "Everything." My voice was, surprisingly even to myself, calm. After a long silence, Michael heaved a deep sigh. "Yes. It's all true." The confession that followed was crueler than I had imagined. Kate, who joined the company as a new employee 3 years ago. Their relationship started right away. When the pregnancy was discovered, Michael said he hesitated. But in the end, he chose to keep the secret. Even after giving birth, Kate never made a fuss. She understands how fatal a scandal would be for my career. After Emma was born, his double life began. A brilliant sales manager by day, family time with his mistress and her child by night. When I learned about our second child, I made a decision. I couldn't continue this life anymore. At that point, Michael momentarily choked on his words. "Officially with Kate." Before those words could finish, the sound of the front door opening echoed. "Michael?" "Linda?" It was Elizabeth's voice. My mother-in-law flinched for a moment at the unusual atmosphere in the living room. However, the moment she saw the photos on the table, her expression changed. "Ah, you finally found out." There was, surprisingly, a tone of resignation in her voice. "I knew too, from the beginning. When Michael confessed to me, I didn't blame him. After all, it's common for men, isn't it? But when he said he wanted to start a new life." Elizabeth sat down in a chair and began speaking matter-of-factly. "To maintain the Brown family's reputation, I wanted to settle it quietly. Linda, we intended to prepare sufficient compensation for you. As for Eric's custody, since Michael is more affluent, naturally." "Mother, that's enough," Michael's voice interrupted Elizabeth's words. "Let's stop the lies." A heavy silence fell over the room. Outside, street lights swayed quietly. "Let me say this," I squeezed out my voice as I slowly stood up. "This won't be settled quietly." The next day, I contacted my lawyer. And the prepared documents began to move all at once. Petition for divorce mediation, claims for property division, and petition regarding Eric's custody. At Michael's company, rumors of the vice president's affair with a female employee and their secret child spread in an instant. Considering the impact on clients, the company advised Michael to resign. His social status, at the peak of his career, crumbled fragilely. Elizabeth's unexpected disgrace sent significant ripples through Greenwich's social circles. The trust and respect she had built over many years were about to disappear overnight. That weekend, I took Eric to Mary's villa for shelter. To begin preparations for a new life. Eric stood by the window, gazing at the setting sun. "Mom, we'll be okay, right?" While embracing my son's small shoulders, I answered with a certain voice. "Yes, I'm sure we'll be fine. There's still a lot of happiness waiting for us." In my womb, the little life moved gently. It was as if it were blessing our new beginning. In the living room of our new home, where the gentle autumn sunshine streamed in, I was watching Eric while holding my 3-month-old daughter, Sarah. He was earnestly reading a picture book next to his sister's baby bed. Outside the window, trees beginning to change color swayed gently in the wind, announcing the arrival of a new season. The lavender I planted after moving had taken root and begun to release its fragrance. Sarah, are you listening? Can you hear your big brother's voice? Today it's "Goodnight Moon." At Eric's gentle voice, Sarah reaches out her tiny hand and smiles. Her dark eyes and adorable smile were undoubtedly proof of our mother-child happiness. Every time I see this scene, tears well up in my eyes. Beyond that tumultuous summer, we had certainly begun walking a new life path. This new home, found with Mary's help, though smaller than before, was a comfortable place where warm sunlight and pleasant breezes passed through. White-based wallpaper, gentle wooden flooring, and natural light streaming through the windows added warmth to our new life. I planted lavender in the garden, and from Eric's room, the neighborhood park is visible. On holidays, we spent more time enjoying ourselves with other parents and children in that park. Sarah's birth brought us new hope. I still vividly remember the moving scene when Eric first met his sister in the delivery room. "Mom, Sarah really came to us, didn't she?" At those words, I hugged him tightly. His anxious voice from that rainy night now seems like a lie. The court's judgment favored us. The amount of punitive damages against Michael far exceeded the lawyer's expectations. The existence of a secret child, planned betrayal, and Eric's psychological distress were all considered. Eric's custody became completely mine, and Michael's visitation rights were strictly limited. The judge particularly emphasized Eric's testimony and the psychological counselor's report. Michael, fired from his company, has since tried several times to return to work, but the impact of the scandal was greater than expected, and he continues to be rejected by every company. In addition to the payment of high damages, the burden of child support for Kate and Emma also weighs heavily. Kate eventually left him, too. The internal investigation for the company's self-preservation caused their relationship to leave a significant scar on her career as well. The last I heard, Michael had started living alone in a cheap apartment in the suburbs. An unimaginable fall from his once glamorous life. Elizabeth completely disappeared from Greenwich's social circles. Former friends avoided her, and invitations to charity events ceased. The last I heard, she was spending her days in depression, confined to her home. Of course, our path hasn't been smooth. Eric attends child-oriented counseling once a week. The separation from his father, environmental changes, and his sister's birth have all had a considerable impact on his heart. "Eric, what did you talk about in counseling today?" "I talked about Dad too. But I'm not scared anymore. Because I have you and Sarah." At those words, I breathe a sigh of relief. It might take time, but we were definitely walking the path to healing. Community support has been strong too. The neighbors warmly welcomed us, and church groups supported us in various ways. And I myself have taken a new step. It's been decided that from next spring, I'll return as a teacher at a nearby kindergarten. "Mom, you'll be a teacher again." "That's amazing." Eric showed genuine joy. How reassuring it is to have a son who supports my dreams. Now, surrounded by the scent of lavender in the garden, we can spend peaceful time. Sarah's growth, Eric's smile, and our gradual progress forward. We have found certain happiness in this new form of family. The conversation with a teacher I met during a kindergarten interview the other day also brought fresh joy. He is also raising children as a single father. A small expectation for an unseen future has begun to sprout in my heart. The days when Eric starts piano lessons and Sarah takes her first steps alone shouldn't be far off. New memories are accumulating, one by one, surely. Outside the window, the lavender in the garden sways gently. Having overcome past suffering, we are now becoming a family in the true sense of the word. My name is Linda Wilson. I'm a former sous chef from a one-Michelin star restaurant. Now I run cooking classes from my home. Yes, now I do. Until 7 years ago, when I got married, I was standing in the kitchen from morning until late night at Jean Georges in New York. I mastered every technique from molecular gastronomy to classic French cuisine and had earned the chef's complete trust. When I left to start my own business after getting married, many people were sad to see me go. But I had a new dream. That day, I had just finished teaching a cooking class as usual. I had taught my students how to make apple tart tatin, showcasing the flavors of autumn. The aroma of caramelized apples still lingered in the classroom. I picked up a high-quality invitation that had been slipped into my door and sighed deeply. It was from my mother-in-law, Patricia Wilson, the owner of Wilson's, the most prestigious restaurant in Brookline. "Mom, is that a letter from Grandma?" asked my 7-year-old son Noah, tilting his head to look at my face. He resembles me, sensitive and kind. He loves helping with cooking, and the sight of his small hands diligently cutting vegetables reminds me of myself when I was young. That's why I've kept my distance from my mother-in-law for the past 2 years. I didn't want Noah's pure heart to be hurt. "It's an invitation to Wilson's 20th anniversary dinner," I said flatly. The invitation was embossed with gold leaf, with the date written in Patricia's perfect handwriting. The envelope was probably made of high-quality Italian handmade paper. Even that was a reflection of her taste. "What about Dad?" Noah asked. I shook my head. My husband Michael had an important presentation in Seattle this week. As vice president of a Boston IT company, he had forged his own path instead of following the family tradition of entering the culinary world. His choice to study computer science at MIT and successfully launch a startup was the right one. But his decision had deeply wounded Patricia, with her strong upper-class sensibilities. "Will we get to see Grandma?" Noah's eyes sparkled with anticipation. Indeed, visits with his grandmother had been limited lately. We hadn't even taken a family Christmas photo in the past 2 years. I looked at the invitation again. It said, "Looking forward to an intimate family gathering." But something felt off. She must have known Michael would be absent. And Patricia's handwriting seemed to have a sharpness to it beneath the usual elegance. My sister-in-law Caroline would certainly be there. Unmarried, she managed the restaurant alongside her mother. A Wellesley College graduate with excellent grades who studied culinary arts in Europe, she had always looked down on my chef background. In her eyes, restaurant apprenticeship was just entertainment for the lower classes. Patricia, who came from a working-class background and entered high society through marriage, ironically held the strongest class consciousness. Since losing her husband 20 years ago, her heart had hardened further. Maintaining the reputation of the prestigious restaurant had become her entire life. When Michael decided not to take over the restaurant, the relationship between mother and son rapidly cooled. Still, Sunday family dinners continued in a diminished fashion. But after an argument with Patricia 2 years ago, when she dismissed Noah's peanut allergy as imagination, even that tradition ended. I still can't forget her cold gaze from that day. I've recently heard rumors about succession issues for the restaurant's management. Apparently, there's subtle tension between Caroline and Patricia. And now, this sudden invitation. I looked back into my son's expectant eyes. Indeed, this might be a chance to repair family relationships. Suppressing the anxiety spreading in my chest, I smiled. Noah, shall we go see Grandma? Yes. My son's innocent smile temporarily diminished the sense of unease in my heart. At dusk in autumn, Wilson's was bathed in soft light. The Victorian-style building from the 1890s standing on Beacon Street seemed to exist beyond time. The brick facade featured elegant curved ironwork, and warm light spilled from the large windows. I clutched my son's small hand. Noah, are you okay? Yes, he answered, but his voice carried a hint of tension. Noah tugged slightly at the collar of his navy blazer, the special outfit we bought for today. Little did I know that putting him in this outfit would become a major regret later. Opening the heavy wooden door, we were greeted by the sparkle of chandeliers. Crystals created patterns of light dancing on the white plastered ceiling. The entrance hall was filled with the scent of fresh flowers, surely dahlias and roses, Patricia's favorites. My nose also detected the aroma of cooking from deeper inside. James, the sommelier, approached us with a smile. Welcome, Linda and Noah. Until 2 years ago, he had poured wine for us at every weekly family dinner. When our eyes met, he smiled apologetically. Did he know something? Welcome, Linda, Noah. Turning around, I saw Patricia and Caroline standing there. Patricia had her raven hair in a perfect chignon and was wearing a Hermès tweed jacket. Next to her, Caroline was dressed in a Chanel charcoal gray dress. Both looked as if they had stepped out of a fashion magazine. Good evening, Patricia, I greeted her politely. I no longer called her mother. Grandma. Noah tried to run to her, but Patricia raised her hand slightly to stop him. Noah, be graceful. This is a fine dining establishment. Her voice was sweet as honey, but somehow cold. Amidst the busy coming and going of servers, we were led to a private room. It was the most formal private room, called the Rose Room, with deep red wallpaper, antique silverware arranged on a sideboard, and a Louis XV-style table near the window that had been passed down from the previous generation. Let's have some wine brought over, Caroline said. We've opened a special 1999 Romani Conti for tonight. Once seated at the table, the servers moved smoothly into action. Amuse-bouches were arranged one after another on the white damask tablecloth, foie gras macarons, potato velouté with truffle aroma, and blinis topped with caviar. This is quite an extravagant dinner, I said. Serving such an elaborate course seemed beyond a mere anniversary celebration. Yes, tonight is special, Patricia raised her glass of deep red wine. Let's make a toast. To the future of our family. I still didn't understand the meaning hidden behind those words. Noah was quietly drinking orange juice. A special children's course was arranged before him. But I was concerned about how Patricia's gaze would occasionally fix sharply on her grandson. Linda, how is your cooking school going? Caroline suddenly asked. I've been hearing about its reputation lately. I sensed something strange in her tone. Caroline had never shown interest in my work before. Yes, it's going well, I answered cautiously. I plan to open a second classroom next month. Patricia raised her eyebrows. How ambitious. It was then that I first noticed the hostility in her eyes. This was no family anniversary, it was an interrogation. This restaurant is the pride of the Wilson family. Patricia suddenly changed her tone. Though someone from the lower classes like you wouldn't understand. The air in the room froze. Noah looked at me anxiously. Caroline sipped her wine and smiled maliciously. We'll enjoy a refined dinner. You two should, well, wait in a more suitable place. What do you mean? My voice trembled. Let me show you the kitchen. Patricia stood up. A place befitting your status. At that moment, I tried to stand up and take my son's hand. But Caroline was already standing behind Noah. Noah, come with Grandma. Caroline's voice was sweet, but her movements were quick. Mom! Noah cried out. We were led, half forcibly, to the kitchen. Opening the large door with gleaming brass handles revealed a kitchen equipped with the latest facilities. A place that would normally excite me now looked like a chamber of horrors. Stainless steel counters were arranged neatly, with ovens and stoves standing quietly. The kitchen, which should have been bustling, was eerily silent. Oh, there's another door here, Patricia said meaningfully. It was the door to a large freezer. I instantly realized her intention. Stop. But my cry came too late. Noah and I were pushed into the freezer, and the heavy door slammed shut with a loud bang. In the darkness, Noah's small body was trembling. From outside, I could hear Patricia's loud laughter. Now, let's enjoy our refined dinner. That voice grew distant. We were left in the cold darkness. My body began to shake. But now was not the time to give in to fear. Noah, are you okay? I embraced my son in the darkness. His small body was trembling. I'm cold. Mom, I'm scared. It's okay. Mom will protect you. I held my son tightly. Noah, would you like to hear about when Mom was a chef? My apprenticeship at Jean Georges. The pride of being present when the restaurant went from 2 stars to 3. And above all, my experience managing ingredients in extreme cold. Now, that experience was becoming our lifeline. First, let's try not to move, I whispered to my son. So we don't lose body heat. I began to feel around to check our surroundings. I understood the structure of commercial freezers. There should be an emergency lever installed. But until I found it, we needed to prepare to survive. Noah, listen carefully to Mom. We're going to make a shelter. My eyes were adjusting to the darkness. I could see a pile of cardboard boxes, packaging used for high-end ingredients like foie gras, truffles, and caviar. Those boxes would save our lives. Noah, please carry the boxes as I tell you. Working with my small son, we began to build a makeshift shelter with cardboard. I dismantled boxes and layered them 2-3 times thick. The methods for keeping ingredients warm that I had learned as a chef were now being used to save human lives. This will block the wind. We crawled into the improvised shelter and wrapped ourselves in commercial plastic wrap. Tools that were commonplace in a professional kitchen now served as blankets. We huddled together, trying to move as little as possible. Time passed. "Mom, I'm thirsty." Hydration was important. But drinking frozen water directly would be dangerous. Instead, I found a box of high-end chocolates nearby by feeling around. "Let's lick these little by little. Melt them with your body heat." The aroma of cocoa brought a slight comfort to our hearts. In the shelter, I kept talking to my son. Happy memories, future dreams, and above all, the importance of staying alive. We couldn't fall asleep. We had to stay conscious. "Noah, keep your eyes open. Let's play a quiz game." Quizzes about cooking. Names of ingredients, cooking methods, world cuisines. Stimulating my son's curiosity while maintaining consciousness. The temporary temperature rise for defrosting provided a brief respite. But it was short-lived. "Mom, my fingers hurt." The beginning of frostbite. I put my son's hands under my armpits and desperately tried to warm them. With fatigue and cold, my thinking was becoming dull. But I couldn't give up. I had to find the emergency lever. "Noah, Mom's going to move a little. You wait here." Crawling out of the shelter, I began exploring along the walls. The coldness of the metal cut into my bare fingers. But somewhere here. Finally, my fingertips felt something. A thin metal rod. This must be it. The emergency lever. I found it. But my frozen fingers wouldn't move freely. The lever was stiff and wouldn't budge. "Noah, Mom needs your help." My son's hands, crawling out of the shelter, looked surprisingly small. But they were still warm. "Hold this. Pull it together with Mom." Together, we desperately pulled the lever. We pulled with all our might once more. And the door moved inward. Light streamed in. We did it. We crawled out of the freezer. My legs were unsteady. But I had to stand up. I rose on trembling legs and firmly grasped my son's hand. We passed through the kitchen, heading for the dining room. There were guests filling the seats. And Patricia and Caroline elegantly sipping wine. "Everyone, please listen." My voice echoed in the suddenly silent restaurant. Raising my discolored, frost-bitten hand, I began to tell the truth in a trembling voice. The blood drained from Patricia's face. Caroline's wine glass fell to the floor. As murmurs spread among the guests, we stood firm. We had survived. The emergency ward at Massachusetts General Hospital welcomed us warmly. The doctors immediately began treatment. Frostbite, hypothermia, dehydration. Diagnoses came one after another. "Linda." I opened my eyes to the voice of my husband rushing into the hospital room. Michael's face, having returned urgently from Seattle, was distorted with anger and sadness. "Where's Noah?" "In the pediatric ward next door. He's stable." My husband took my hand and for the first time, shed tears. "Mother. I can't believe Mother would do something like this." At that moment, the TV in the hospital room began broadcasting breaking news. A shocking imprisonment incident at a prestigious Brookline restaurant. Police are revealing details about the arrest of the owner and co-manager. The screen showed the exterior of Wilson's and images of Patricia and Caroline in handcuffs. It was the moment when the glamorous mask of high society was torn away in an instant. Hours later, a detective visited the hospital room. "We've checked the security camera footage," the detective said in a gruff voice. "It's clear this was a premeditated crime. The security cameras had recorded everything. Patricia and her daughter checking the emergency lever of the freezer beforehand. Instructions to send the kitchen staff home early. And the moment they imprisoned us. Testimonies are coming in from restaurant employees as well." The detective opened a thick file. It contained truths that had been hidden until now. Harassment of former employees. Unjust dismissals. And the most shocking fact. Your son's allergic reaction 2 years ago. That was no accident. A chill ran down my spine. Noah's attack that day. Patricia had known. She had known about the peanut allergy and deliberately. During questioning, Caroline confessed. The detective continued. There was conflict with Mrs. Patricia over the succession of management rights. The truth was gradually becoming clear. Patricia had no intention of letting Caroline inherit the restaurant. She believed that Michael's son, Noah, was the rightful successor. But the existence of me, an unsuitable mother, was interfering with her perfect plan. That night, Michael spent a long time in the hospital room. "Mother was too obsessed with perfection," he said in a tired voice. "Family tradition, social status, the restaurant's reputation. She became trapped by these things and lost her heart as a human being." The next day, social media was abuzz with the incident. The dark side of the established restaurant was being revealed one after another. A week later, a preliminary hearing began at the Suffolk County Courthouse. Opening the heavy wooden doors, we were enveloped by the cool air. A court artist was busily moving her pencil. Local media reporters sat in the gallery. And there were former regular customers. Their eyes showed surprise and disappointment. Patricia appeared dressed in a brand-name suit. But her appearance had lost its former dignity. Next to her, Caroline kept her head down. "Defendant, Patricia Wilson," the judge's voice resonated. "You are charged with first-degree imprisonment and aggravated charges of intentional harm to a minor." When I took the witness stand, I desperately tried to control my trembling voice. I had to calmly describe the terror of that time. "My son still has nightmares," I testified. "He's afraid of the dark and startles at the sound of refrigerators. You stole a 7-year-old child's right to sleep peacefully." The expressions of the jurors changed. Especially the older women's eyes were burning with anger. The defense tried to emphasize Patricia's social contributions. Her achievements in the restaurant industry, donations to charity, reputation in the community. However, the prosecution was relentless. "The defendant has used her social status to commit various abuses over many years," the prosecutor said forcefully. "This incident is just the tip of the iceberg." Evidence photos were presented one after another. Maya and Noah's frostbite. Security camera footage. And most decisively, messages found on Patricia's smartphone. "It's a perfect plan. No one will suspect anything. It should be treated as an accident." The jury's deliberation ended surprisingly quickly. We present our verdict for defendants Patricia Wilson and Caroline Wilson. The courtroom fell silent. Patricia Wilson, for first-degree imprisonment and intentional harm to a minor, 3 years imprisonment. Caroline Wilson, for complicity, 2 years imprisonment. When the sentence was handed down, I squeezed Michael's hand tightly. It was over. But the judge added more. I also order both defendants to be permanently banned from the food and beverage industry. The business license for the restaurant Wilson's is immediately revoked, and ownership rights will be transferred to Mr. Michael Wilson. As we left the courtroom, Patricia turned toward us. In her eyes, for the first time, there was a hint of regret. Outside, the autumn sunlight was dazzling. A week in the hospital, followed by 3 weeks of legal proceedings. The season had deepened, and the trees were ablaze with autumn colors. "Mom, I'm hungry," Noah whispered softly. I hugged my son. "Yes. Let's make a special dinner today. All of us together." On the way home, Michael said quietly, "I want you to help me decide what to do with the restaurant." I looked up at the sky. Through a break in the clouds, a ray of hope was shining through. Justice had prevailed, and the truth had been revealed. But this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of creating a new Wilsons together as a family. 1 year later in autumn, Noah by Wilson's, which had just reopened after renovation, was wrapped in the soft light of dusk. I stood in the new kitchen, absorbed in the final touches. A hint of truffle aroma on the sauce cotter vents. This was the highlight of the new menu, which pursued simple but deep flavors. "Linda, customers are already starting to line up," informed Maria, the sous chef. She was a skilled chef who had been fired from the former Wilson's. After the truth came to light, she was the first person I approached. "Thank you. Tonight is a special night." The restaurant's renovation was a symbol of our new beginning. While preserving the stately Victorian exterior, the interior was bright and open. White walls with large windows, and warm wooden furniture. Above all, making the kitchen walls glass meant the cooking process was visible from the dining area. Nothing to hide, this was our new philosophy. "Mom." Turning to the voice, I saw Noah running toward me in his school uniform. He had stopped by on his way home from school today. "Welcome back. How was your math test?" "Perfect score." My heart warmed at my son's smile. After that incident, Noah's recovery was surprisingly fast. Twice weekly counseling, and above all, valuing time spent as a family. Now, he no longer fears the sound of refrigerators. "Then let's make a celebration dessert." The Noah from before might have been afraid to enter the kitchen. But not now. My son stands next to me, his eyes shining. "Are we making apple tart tatin today?" "Yes. I think Grandma will be happy too. We've been visiting Patricia. Participating in a prison rehabilitation program, she has been changing little by little. During our first visits, she couldn't speak, but now she listens to Noah's school stories and sometimes sheds tears. "Linda." Turning around, I saw Michael standing there. "It seems he left work early today. The restaurant association called," he announced happily. "We've been selected as a finalist for this year's Best New Restaurant Award." A small cheer rose from the staff. Dad, that's amazing. Noah jumped up. I smiled silently. This year has truly been a time of transformation for our family. Caroline moved to California immediately after her release. Having gone through the rehabilitation program, she now works for a nonprofit organization. I quietly support her as she acknowledges her mistakes and begins a new life. At the final staff meeting before opening, I stood before the assembled team. Tonight is a special night. A year ago, this restaurant was the scene of a tragic incident. But now, we have created a new Wilson's. This is a place filled with love and hope. And above all, a place that pursues authentic flavors. The staff's eyes gleamed with pride. Many of them had been treated unfairly under the previous management. But now, they are filled with confidence. At 6 p.m., we welcomed our opening time. Our first customers were unexpected, the Thompson couple, regular customers who had been the first to call the police during that incident. Welcome back, I greeted them sincerely. We're home, Mrs. Thompson said, tearing up. True warmth has returned to this restaurant. Those words warmed my heart. The dinner service progressed smoothly. The new menu was well received. Especially my new creation, maple glazed duck confit, which was praised in the Boston Globe's review. Late at night, after closing. In the cleaned kitchen, I was alone checking the prep list for tomorrow. Mom, shall we go home now? Noah peeked in. Michael seemed to have finished his paperwork too. Ah, yes. Stepping outside, the autumn night sky was brilliant with stars. The three of us walked with shoulders touching. Hey, next Sunday, Grandma will be released, right? Noah said. Yes. Can Grandma come to our house? Michael and I looked at each other. Of course, I answered. Let's create new memories together. The cold autumn wind caressed my cheeks. But my heart was warm. This year, we've learned a lot. The danger of seeking too much perfection. The importance of forgiveness. And above all, what true family bonds mean. The restaurant sign swayed slightly in the night breeze. Noah by Wilson's. This name contains our wish. To accept the past and walk toward the future. And above all, to pass on the true meaning of family tradition to the next generation. It's the taste of love and forgiveness. Creating a place where everyone can truly say, I'm home. Our new story has just begun. But now, we're taking steady steps. Under the starry sky, our steps hurrying home were very light.